All right, it is here, Decision Day in Iowa. Good afternoon. I'm Erin Burnett in Washington.
And I'm Wolf Blitzer in New York. We want to welcome you to CNN's special live coverage of the Iowa caucuses. We are counting down to the official start of the first contest in the Republican presidential race.
And we just want to confuse people, Wolf, right? I'm in Washington, you're in New York. Everybody get ready. You don't know what to expect tonight. The battle for Iowa taking place against a backdrop, of course, of those record cold temperatures we've been talking about. In some places in Iowa, the real field temperature is 35 below zero, which has not stopped the candidates in a contest all about turnout, trying to get every single person out they can. These final hours, they have been making one final case for their candidacies.
We know that this is how we're going to get our country back on track. But remember, today is the day we make history.
I'm running on your issues and your family's issues, and solely to turn this country around.
All right, now here's what's interesting. You didn't see Trump there, right? I mean, he made his final argument online, attacking his opponents and President Biden. And while Trump dominates the race, of course, as we've been saying, anything can happen. And tonight's results could solidify Trump's dominance over the party or signal some sort of a shift, the beginning of a longer primary ahead, Wolf.
Indeed, anything can happen, as we always say. We have a team of our correspondents inside caucus sites and at the candidates' headquarters as we begin our special live coverage of this truly important historic day in Iowa. Jeff Zeleny is beginning our coverage in Des Moines for us right now. Jeff, today's the day, so give us a sense of what we can expect.
Well, if all of the campaigns have been working furiously behind the scenes throughout the day, from the beginning of sunup here through this current point until the 4 hours until Iowans start casting their preference and finally open this 2024 Republican presidential nominating contest. You heard the closing arguments there from Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. Of course, all is on the line for both of them, perhaps more for Ron DeSantis, who has invested so much time, so much money here in this state. There's no doubt Nikki Haley is already looking ahead to New Hampshire, but it depends how she finishes here in Iowa tonight. And of course, former President Donald Trump. He's been on the phone all day, I'm told, with some of his precinct caucus captains. They're the people who will be his volunteers, essentially, at all of the locations, trying to make sure their supporters come. So how this is going to unfold is in about 1,657 precincts across Iowa, from one corner to the other, in about 730 locations, in schools, in libraries, in churches. So in just a few hours, those Republicans are going to show up, wait in line, and then finally go through the doors at 7 o'clock here in Iowa, 8 o'clock Eastern time, and begin giving their preference. But the big question, the big wild card in this is still the weather. The temperature for sure, but also road conditions. In 28 of Iowa's 99 counties, there is just one caucus location. So some of these supporters and voters will have to drive for miles and miles and miles over snow-covered, perhaps ice-covered roads. So the question is turnout. How many of them are going to turn out? So that's why the campaigns right now, I've just been talking to advisors, and all of them are still trying to work through their lists, trying to get their supporters to the polls, offering everything from rides and warm vans to jump starts if they need them. But Aaron, this is one true wild card. For all the precision that goes into campaign planning, the weather here, Mother Nature, may have her own verdict to say on this as well. But you can just feel the anticipation. Finally, this campaign is underway in just a few hours. Aaron.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. And everyone here with me. It's interesting, Jonah. There was a wire that came across. A couple of colleges in parts of Iowa were suspending classes tomorrow, putting them online. Just to give a sense that if one were in a normal situation, you would not be going out right now. Right. And yet the whole point now today for each of these candidates is to actually get people to go out. So how do you think this actually plays tonight?
Look, I think the road condition stuff is more important than the ambient temperature. Midwesterners go out in the cold a lot. They like to wear shorts when they shouldn't be. They forget to bring their coats. You know, I mean, like, this is a thing that, like, Midwesterners take pride in. But objectively, if the roads aren't in good shape, that has knock-on effects. I do think, you know, look, I mean, it's not going to play out for everybody the same way. Nikki Haley's polling says that her core voters are less enthusiastic than Trump's voters.
Right.
But Trump's voters are also, a lot of them are low propensity first-time voters. And Ron DeSantis has much bigger, much more built-out ground game. So you could see it affecting things in different ways in different places. Not being on the ground there to witness it, it's very easy to speculate about what the different possibilities are about the weather stuff. But I think they kind of all cancel each other out.
It's interesting, though. You see Nikki Haley out today, Ron DeSantis out today. Trump, no. Online.
He seems very confident. Look, this is Donald Trump's to lose, and the numbers don't look like he's going to lose. And what we're seeing with the other guys is they're playing the expectations game. Everyone wants to sort of tamp it down. There's no question that we've seen Nikki Haley surge in polls, but does that translate to Iowa? Is the fact that DeSantis is no longer the it candidate alternative to Trump? Do his people go to Nikki Haley, or do they go to Donald Trump? I just want to say one thing. Thank goodness we're finally here today.
I know, like, let's get going. Let's get it going, people. All right, so online, Trump, you know, he did, I know you've been talking to sources, and a lot of sources you speak to saying, you know, he called his caucus captains, he's been doing things, but online, he went online today to slam Vivek Ramaswamy. Again, a vote for Vivek is a wasted vote. I like Vivek, but he played it too cute with us.
Yeah, Aaron, I mean, I think before that Des Moines Register poll came out, and that's obviously the gold standard, and indicated that Donald Trump is on his way to cruising to victory, I think he was probably a little worried about the numbers. And where else would you look for some votes right now other than Vivek Ramaswamy, who has essentially operated almost like a Trump press secretary out on the campaign trail. He has only mildly criticized Donald Trump during this process. But, you know, as to why Trump is doing so well, I talked to a Trump advisor, longtime advisor, earlier today who said, you know, if you look at the poll numbers, and this was talked about in the New York Times today, college-educated Republicans have come back to Donald Trump, which is an astonishing development. He really hemorrhaged support in that department after January 6th. They went to Ron DeSantis for a little while, but now they've come back, and that's a big reason why he is way out in front.
There's an interesting reason for that, and that's because of the indictments. You know, after so many years of being told that institutions are corrupt, there is a sense that the institutions that are indicting Donald Trump for 91 felonies are also corrupt. And so it has changed the minds of some college-educated voters to say, okay, we're going to give Donald Trump a shot here because he's being victimized by these corrupt institutions. And so these are voters that he didn't have, that he has now. One other thing I'd like to say about Donald Trump, which is so fascinating to me, Ron DeSantis has gone to every county in the state. Nikki Haley is out there 10 times a day talking to audiences. Donald Trump flies in, gives a speech, doesn't interact at all with the audience except maybe to deliver pizzas or whatever, doesn't take questions, and flies out. And that's okay for some reason. That is fine. And these are people, who, like in all the early states, who pride themselves on getting to know the candidates. And there's clearly a sense that they know Donald Trump, they know who he is, and so it doesn't matter. He doesn't have to play by the other rules. He's worried about his supporters being complacent, but he hasn't been there as much as the other folks, and he certainly hasn't interacted.
A totally different standard. I mean, you know, Eva McKend is on the ground out there, Jane, and she was just talking to a pastor. This was an interesting story. I don't know if anyone, she's talking to a pastor who actually prayed with Ron DeSantis before the debate last week. Prays, is committed to him, comes out today and says, nope, I'm switching. I'm switching to Haley, and one of the reasons is he's a good man, but he doesn't excite or inspire me. Now, what do you take away from something like that happening at this moment?
I think that we're starting to see people look at the reality on the ground. And look, like, I have never been personally inspired by Ron DeSantis, but that's okay. The issue is that voters aren't right now. And I think that one thing that's been striking me is that Donald Trump is permitted to say and do absolutely anything.
That's right.
And with Ron DeSantis, he's been meaner to a drag queen who once opened at Hamburger Mary's than he has been to Donald Trump. And so I think that there's a real sense here. I think that this tonight is Trump's to lose. Trump has actually the highest expectations. I think that there have been people talking about, like, he could reach 60% tonight. And I think that it'll be interesting to see if he does that. But I also think, like, it's telling to me that people are starting to say what a lot of us have already been thinking, that Ron DeSantis doesn't have it. And whatever that is, that's what Trump has.
Yeah, this Trump advisor I was talking, I know you have to go, but I mean, this advisor was saying Ron DeSantis has run the worst campaign ever.
Which is amazing because he's got all the ground game and everything. All right, all staying with us here on this important day. Next, we're going to take you back live to the ground in Iowa to see what the mood is at the Haley and DeSantis campaigns in these final hours before people show up at the caucus sites. And John King is here at the Magic Wall, and he is going to show you exactly what he's looking for tonight.
Welcome back to CNN's special live coverage of the Iowa caucuses. We're closely following what's likely a race for second place. Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis are making their final pitches to Iowans, and they're calling out the former president. Listen.
We don't want to have another nail biter where we're holding our breath, having our country hanging in on a string. And every one of those polls, Ron doesn't beat Biden. Trump, it's head-to-head. On a good day, he might be up by 2 points.
You know, the former president, how many people that served in his administration are even willing to publicly support him, much less come in negative temperatures to go door to door? Not a lot.
DeSantis perhaps has the most to lose tonight. He's put almost all of his energy and so much money into winning Iowa. Nikki Haley is hoping to get a boost headed into the New Hampshire primary. Jessica Dean and Kylie Atwood are both covering these campaigns for us tonight. Jessica, I'll start with you. I want to start with you because you're over at the DeSantis headquarters, and I understand you have some new reporting about the mood inside that campaign tonight.
That's right, Wolf. I talked to one campaign source who told me that Governor DeSantis is feeling loose, relaxed, and in his words, ready to roll. And that's where they are. He's going across the state with his final events today before the caucuses start this evening. And it has been interesting to see his closing message. Last night, I was with him at an event in Ankeny, just outside of Des Moines, and we really saw him zero in on the former president, on Donald Trump, really going after him. He only mentioned Nikki Haley once by name, but really directly going after the former president. And look, you said it. Nobody has more on the line here in Iowa than Governor DeSantis. He has put so much time and resources into this state, really hoping that at the end of it, he would emerge as the Trump alternative. And we have seen Nikki Haley with that momentum, and we are watching this battle likely, no one's voted yet, for second place play out. But it means a lot to the DeSantis campaign and to the candidate. If he comes in second, that's one thing. If he comes in third, what does that mean moving forward as we move into New Hampshire, where Nikki Haley is polling quite well against the former president? So those are some of the questions. But as for the mood inside the headquarters, I stopped by earlier today, Wolf. There were people on the phone. He was there doing television interviews. Everybody seems super energetic, ready for tonight. Of course, they have built out with that super PAC aligned with him this big infrastructure here, over 900,000 doors knocked, precinct captains in all 99 counties. They're hoping that that will make the difference, but we'll see, Wolf.
We will certainly see. Jessica, thank you. Kylie, I know you just caught up with Nikki Haley at a stop she made in Pella, Iowa. What did she say about her expectations for tonight?
Well, Wolf, unsurprisingly, she resisted setting any specific expectations for the results of the Iowa caucus tonight. She said she hopes that she has a strong showing here in Iowa, just like she's hoping for a strong showing in New Hampshire and South Carolina. Now, the other thing that she spoke about is the fact that she has been traversing the state, making this case to Iowans, and she continued to do that today. One of the interesting things about Nikki Haley is that her husband, Michael, is deployed overseas right now. He's in the South Carolina National Guard, so while she's here caucusing, preparing for the caucus with her daughter and her son, she's not here with Michael. She also hasn't been able to speak to him today, she told me earlier today. Just listen to how she described that.
He is in the middle of a lot of stuff. As you know, the world is on fire, so he hasn't had access to communication for a few days.
Even today?
No. And so, our hope is that we're going to hear from him, and that, I just pray that he comes home to us safely. But I know that he's proud of me, and I'm proud of him.
Now, we know, as Jessica was saying earlier, that Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis are really battling it out here in Iowa for number 2. Nikki Haley wouldn't say how she makes this into a two-person race between her and former President Trump if Ron DeSantis comes in ahead of her here in Iowa. They're just trying to get every voter to head out to those caucus sites later tonight. She did defend her conservative credentials because Ron DeSantis earlier said that he believes she can't beat Trump because she doesn't have the support of conservatives within the Republican base. She said that's not true. She was a Tea Party governor. She was ambassador to the United Nations, strong ambassador to the United Nations. She is making the case that not only can she beat Trump in the primary, but she can also beat him in the general election. And that is a case she's been making from day one and a case she's been making increasingly in the final hours before voting tonight. Wolf.
All right, Kylie, excellent report. Thank you very much. Let's get to our panel. And I want to start with Adam Kinzinger, the former congressman. Would you rather be Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis going into this contest for second place tonight?
I think tonight I'd probably rather be Nikki Haley because I just feel like the momentum's with her. And on something like this, the momentum's beneficial on a caucus night. You know, I say that with the caveat, which we're going to have caveats all night, I'm sure, but with the caveat that Ron DeSantis, this is his stand. Like, he has to come in second here or he's out. But I'll also say with that, if he comes in second tonight, I think the chance of having anybody but Donald Trump, and I think namely it's only Nikki Haley that could be the nominee besides Donald Trump at this point, it becomes basically Donald Trump as the nominee because Nikki has to have momentum coming out of tonight. She has to have momentum out of New Hampshire for any prayer of her to gain momentum anywhere else, because right now it's obviously Donald Trump's to lose.
Anna, you've watched DeSantis. You live in Florida, so you know him well. He's visited all 99 counties. He says that maybe every hour, all 99 counties in Iowa. So why is he fighting so hard simply to come in second place?
Maybe because he has spent too much time in Iowa and they've gotten to know him. And they've seen what I've been saying for a long time, which is that there's no it there when it comes to Ron DeSantis. He happened to have beaten Charlie Crist in November and made him look like he was this invincible person. He's not. But, you know, I just heard Jessica say that one of his senior advisors described him as loose, relaxed, and ready to roll. He's been my governor for 5 years. I've never seen him loose, relaxed, or ready to roll. And I think he just created a first impression in Iowa that was a bad one. He's had a campaign that's been full of drama. He just has not resonated. I actually think he went too far. He became a one-song candidate, woke, 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 when what people wanted to hear about was policy. We've seen him change in the recent weeks, but it's too late. That first impression has sunk in.
Interesting. You know, Scott, in the final Des Moines Register poll, and we've all studied it very closely, let's put some of the numbers up on the screen. 27% of voters with a college degree now say they support Nikki Haley. That's where she's seeing some of her strongest support right now. In fact, she's only slightly behind Donald Trump, who's at 34% with those voters who have college degrees.
Yeah, I mean, her candidacy is sort of tailor-made for people who ever had to go sit through a meeting at the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, she is the least hostile to corporate America. And these are the people you meet in the Republican Party who say, gosh, I just wish we could either go back or maybe get all the stuff and the tax cuts, but without all the baggage of Donald Trump. That's kind of the candidacy she has constructed. The question's always been, are there enough Republicans left who would actually nominate sort of a pre-Trump era Republican, or are we too far gone past that point? If you look at the national polls, CBS this weekend, Trump's sitting at 69% nationally, although we're covering this race tonight and trying to pick it apart. It's sort of hard for me to imagine that a party that has someone sitting at 69 right now would not be that party's nominee when there's really nothing new to learn about the guy sitting on top. What else could you learn about Donald Trump right now that would cause you to pull back? That's what Haley's been fighting the entire time.
Yeah, it's an important point. Jamal Simmons is with us as well. In that same final Des Moines Register poll, it found that more than 40% of Haley supporters in Iowa say they would back Joe Biden over Trump. What impact do you think Democrats and independents might have in tonight's caucuses?
They'll certainly have an They'll certainly have an impact in tonight's caucus. They'll have an impact probably in New Hampshire as well. Those are the two states where you can do that and it'll matter. To get to Scott's point about what else is there to learn, I think there's not much left to learn about Donald Trump. There's a lot more left to learn about Nikki Haley if you're in one of these states where she hasn't been campaigning very much. So the question I have had throughout this campaign is, if Nikki Haley surprises people and comes in second in Iowa, she surprises people and gets pretty close or maybe beats Donald Trump in New Hampshire, are there enough Republicans who say they're for Donald Trump because they think he's the guy? But when they find out there's a gal that maybe they could also side with, maybe they'll decide, well, maybe I don't want to be with Donald Trump anymore. I'll get in the other car and ride with Nikki Haley for a while and see where that takes me.
Yeah, lots of drama unfolding right now, guys. Thank you very, very much. And our special live coverage of the Iowa caucuses will continue. John King is standing by at the Magic Wall. He knows all of Iowa's 99 counties, as all of us know, what he's focusing on as the results begin to come in. Stand by for that. Plus, longtime Republican donor Dan Eberhardt joins us. He's on the ground in Iowa with the DeSantis campaign. What does DeSantis need to do tonight to simply stay in the race?
And we are back with our special coverage of the Iowa caucuses. Former President Donald Trump, just a few moments ago, came out of his hotel and made this prediction about tonight.
And we're going to have a tremendous night tonight. The people are fantastic, and I've never seen spirit like they have countrywide. But in Iowa, I've never seen spirit like this.
He had posted online earlier, but had not been on the trail today, unlike Haley and DeSantis. But now, as you see him leaving his hotel. Okay, let's go to John King at the Magic Wall. So, you know, John, as you take that into account, right, he is expecting to win. The polls show that. So he didn't need to spend the day out today. It was his calculus. What are you looking for tonight?
Well, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of Iowa's 99 counties in a few minutes and throughout the night and into tomorrow. I think we should also remember today is the starting gate. This is day one, page one of the 2024 election story. Our last election cycle ended with violence at the Capitol. So for me, amen. People are going to be voting tonight out in Iowa. That's a big deal. Number two, the nomination race is about delegates. Yes, Trump is the overwhelming, far away, keep adding your big adjectives, favorite. He's the overwhelming favorite without a doubt. But tonight we start counting the delegates. Everybody starts at zero. These are alphabetical. Donald Trump's at the bottom. Of course, he's at the top when it comes to the expectations. But we get to start this tonight. The process starts tonight. And look, it's always worth winning a party's nomination. The Republican nomination this year is well worth winning because of this. As we start the cycle, it's important to note the Democrats aren't doing any real business tonight, but the incumbent president of the United States, the Democrat Joe Biden, look at that, a 38% approval rating. That is historically weak. That's what this is about. This is the beginning of the process to win the White House, and the incumbent starts, long way to go, but starts in a historically weak place, which is why winning Iowa matters so much, and which is why, Aaron, as we go through this tonight, the biggest question is how strong is Trump? Are there any signs of vulnerability? That's what we'll be looking for when we start counting votes.
So I know that, you know, it's hard to make comparisons to the past in some senses, right? You have somebody, Trump, running as an incumbent who isn't really an incumbent. But, you know, so it's different in many ways. But is there anything that you can take away from past Iowa results that's instructive for what you're looking for tonight?
Of course, you're always trying to learn. Number one is Trump's hold on the party. It started in Iowa. He lost Iowa in 2016, but that was the first act in his then hostile takeover of the Republican Party. It's his party now. So let's use the past. I'll give you 3 places I'm going to be watching tonight. I'll circle them first, and then I'll tell you why. And we come in here, and we go out here. So why am I picking these places? Well, let's turn this up. Let's go back to 2016. Ted Cruz won Iowa, but just barely, right? 28% to 24%. Let me start out here in the West in Sioux City and Woodbury County. This is one of the places Donald Trump won, not by a lot, but by 4 points over Ted Cruz. One question tonight is in these conservative places, Sioux City, Woodbury County, that's Nebraska, that's South Dakota. You're in the western part of the state, conservative country. Does Trump build on what he did in 2016? Has he solidified the voters who were for Cruz or for Rubio last time? How much has he grown? That's a big question for me tonight. Then we come into the middle of the state. Look at these counties here. Those are counties won by Marco Rubio, your traditional Republican, your George W. Bush type Republican. He won here. He won in Story County, which is where Ames is, not by a lot, but he won in Polk County. If Nikki Haley is going to surprise us tonight, it's going to come from the Rubio places, the suburbs that have been growing since then. So that's at one place I'll be watching tonight. One last place, I want to come over to the eastern part of the state and Scott County. Jim Acosta mentioned this a bit earlier. Can Donald Trump rebuild his shattered support among suburbanites? Yeah, to do that, you have to start with Republicans. Rubio won Scott County, Davenport, and the suburbs around it in 2016. Trump came in a very close second. We know in 2018, 2020, and 2022, that's where Donald Trump suffered, in the suburbs. Do we see any seeds tonight of a comeback for Trump in these critical places? It's another thing to look for.
All right, John, thank you. And we're going to be watching all of those places and 96 more. Live pictures out of Iowa, where, of course, across the state, the weather is going to have a huge question mark tonight. 35 below zero in some areas. The chill actually getting worse as people start showing up to caucus because, of course, it will be dark. Plus, longtime Republican donor Dan Eberhart joins us live. He has thrown his support behind DeSantis. So where is he now? And what does he think DeSantis needs to do tonight in order to keep his campaign alive?
Welcome back to CNN's special coverage of the Iowa caucuses, the coldest caucuses in history, we're told. Take a look at these live pictures coming in of the Iowa state capitol, where the temperatures are now below zero. The dangerous Arctic air will no doubt play a role in tonight's turnout. Elisa Rafa is joining us now from the CNN Weather Center. Elisa, what kind of conditions are we actually talking about right now?
We're talking about temperatures staying sub-zero. Des Moines hit zero today for the first time since Saturday afternoon, and much of the rest of the state is still sitting sub-zero. Temperatures as cold as 6 degrees below zero in Sheldon. Then you factor in the wind chill, and you have these wind chill values 20 to 35 degrees below zero. So incredibly cold. And yes, Iowa gets cold, but not this cold. This is the departure from normal. We're about 30 degrees colder than average for this time of year in Iowa. So wind chill warnings are in effect, because as we go through the evening, we'll continue to find those wind chills get to dangerous levels. We're talking frostbite times in 20 minutes or less, and you could be looking at symptoms of hypothermia. Shivering, difficulty speaking, and stiff muscles are things that people need to watch out for. As these caucus events are going on this evening, we'll continue to find temperatures dipping. We're looking at them 5 to 10 degrees below zero as we go through the evening. Factor in the wind chill, it's 30 to 35 degrees below zero. And when you look at past caucuses, you can see what I was saying. This isn't quite Iowa weather. Most of the past caucuses were in the 30s and 40s. 2004 was the previous coldest at 16 degrees, but today, again, we only hit 0 degrees in Des Moines. And what I find so fascinating about this is that this is coming on the heels of the warmest winter on record for Iowa. Since December 1st, they haven't really gotten a cold snap, so it's definitely not what they're used to for this time of year. Erin?
All right, Elisa, it is pretty incredible. When you're coming off the warmest winter ever, all of a sudden, these coldest few days and hitting right now as these first votes come in. So as this weather, it continues to be a major focus. The DeSantis campaign is trying to rival Trump's campaign to get people out. And to do that in the cold weather, they've been offering rides. They've been trying to basically corner the market on four-wheel drive SUVs and get them from people's homes to the caucus sites. Will it be enough? Joining me now is Dan Eberhart, a Republican political donor. He backs Ron DeSantis. Dan, you and I have talked many times over the years. Obviously, in recent months, you have been a staunch supporter of Ron DeSantis. So we're just a few hours out now from people actually showing up at these caucus sites. How do you feel about the DeSantis campaign tonight?
I feel good. I think we're in the position of being the underdog, and I think that Governor DeSantis has done all the work on the ground. You know, unlike Donald Trump, he's done, you know, a huge amount of events here, and I think expectations are sky high for the others, and Governor DeSantis is well set up for a comeback here.
Okay, set up for a comeback. I will say, of course, people have really lauded his ground game, Dan, right? That he's been to all 99 counties, he's put in the work, he's done it right. But his poll numbers, of course, have not moved since the beginning, right? And in fact, they went down a few points in that final Des Moines Register poll that came out. So where do you stand on this as a donor? Is third acceptable to you? Does he continue if he comes in at third or not?
Well, I think he does continue. Look, he's got a town hall with Wolf Blitzer tomorrow and a lot of things scheduled. He's headed to South Carolina tonight after he addresses supporters. But I think you're going to be surprised tonight. Look, if you look in that last Des Moines Register poll, there's a lot of good news for Governor DeSantis. His supporters have the highest level of enthusiasm and are the most likely to turn out tonight. And he's not expecting to win, he's not expecting Democrat, votes like Nikki Haley is tonight. And I think that we're in a good position to really defy expectations and overcome, what the polls may suggest.
So obviously, we don't know. The votes haven't been cast, so we'll see tonight. Eva McKend, our reporter on the ground there, actually just had a conversation, though, I wanted to share with you, Dan, because it really stood out to me. So she spoke to a longtime Iowa pastor. His name's John Palmer. And he had committed to caucusing for DeSantis. He actually went to the debate last week, the CNN debate with Jake and Dana. He personally prayed with DeSantis ahead of that. He now has changed his mind, and he says he's going to caucus tonight for Nikki Haley. He says, quote, "I believe the competency factor in Governor Haley is stronger and her ability to bring people together." And he continued to say Ron DeSantis is a good man. He simply doesn't excite or inspire him. What do you say to that? And someone making that decision now, when they actually know their vote truly counts, it's time to cast it, to come out and say something like that.
Well, look, I think you've got a lot of strong support for Governor DeSantis on the ground. I was at an event last night. Senator Ernst was there. Governor Reynolds was there, along with some other local elected officials. I think there's a lot of Iowans supporting Ron DeSantis. I think he may not be the most exciting, the most captivating candidate, but I think he would be the best president of the United States, the best representative of the Republican Party. And quite frankly, he's got the most done. He got 100% of what he campaigned on when we were running for governor in Florida done since he was elected. And that's the kind of competent leadership I think we need. Look, a lot of politicians are good at this kind of campaign stuff and then fail to produce. And Ron DeSantis is maybe an okay campaigner and excellent at producing once he's in office. So, but I think a lot of these voters in Iowa have been up close and they've met Governor DeSantis. And I think we're going to defy expectations tonight.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. And Dan, I appreciate your time. Thanks. And our special coverage of the Iowa caucuses continues after this, and we are also following breaking news out of Israel this afternoon, where Hamas is celebrating 2 deadly terror attacks today, and we are learning of a new video featuring hostages. Also tonight, the family of Paul Whelan, the American who's being held in Russia, tonight revealing that they couldn't reach him for days. What happened? Whelan's sister is my guest.
Welcome back to our special coverage of the Iowa caucuses. We'll have much more on Iowa in just a few moments. But first, there's some other major breaking news we're following right now. Hamas today praising twin terror attacks in the central Israeli city of Ra'anana. 1 person was killed, 17 were injured after officials say stolen vehicles were used to run over multiple people in several locations. And it comes as Hamas released new video of 3 Israeli hostages being held in Gaza. CNN is not showing the Hamas video because they were likely speaking under duress. But the undated tape shows Yossi Sharabi, 53, and Itai Sversky, 38, as well as 26-year-old Noah Argamani, who was seen in this video on October 7th, dragged away on a motorcycle by Hamas militants at that Nova Music Festival not far from Gaza. CNN's Nick Robertson is joining us now in Tel Aviv. Nick, I understand an elderly woman in her 70s was killed in those terror attacks just hours after Hamas released video of those 3 Israeli hostages. What else are you learning?
Yeah, just specifically on that video from Hamas. Hamas on Sunday, when they released that video, said they would update about the hostages on Monday, and they did. They released another video, and the IDF spokesman, Rear Admiral Hagari, referenced that today when he refuted some of the allegations that Hamas had made in this second video that he called essentially psychological torture against the families of all hostages. He said that the IDF have been in touch with the families of 2 of the hostages who were depicted in the video, and he said as well that the IDF was concerned about their welfare at this time. But that was the extent of the details that we got from Rear Admiral Hagari on that twin ramming attack in that affluent central Israeli city today. That involved 2 men, Palestinians from Hebron, about 100 miles away from the site of the attack, early afternoon. A twin attack, synchronized, so they both, using stolen cars, according to the IDF, drove into groups of people in that city. Many of them were standing at a bus stop. That's where we understand the elderly lady was killed. 2 people critically injured. 7 of the people injured also children. Erin?
All right, Nick, thank you very much. And as everyone, of course, continues to wonder and hope for the fate of those hostages. We talk about another American hostage tonight, the family of Paul Whelan, the American who has been behind bars in Russia for 5 years. Now, the family is coming out and revealing that they weren't able to reach him for a week. And, of course, you remember what just happened with Alexei Navalny when he went missing and showed up in an even worse penal colony. The Whelan family saw this, their brother, their son, go missing after learning of physical attacks against him. President Biden held a private meeting with Whelan's sister Elizabeth shortly after the family's contact was cut off, and this meeting lasted 40 minutes. Paul Whelan's sister Elizabeth joins me now in her first and only television interview since that meeting. And Elizabeth, first of all, thank you for being with me. I'm so glad now that finally I'm talking to you after you've had a chance to meet with President Biden, because I know you have been asking for that meeting and hoping to get that meeting for months. What happened? What did the president tell you?
Well, I'd love to share with you the details, but I'm going to keep it to sort of the surface. I mean, a family is we're uniquely positioned to be able to interact with a lot of people on Paul's effort, all the way from the U.S. Embassy in Moscow to the president. And, I don't feel like the president is a wizard with a magic wand, but he is a very sensible man. And at this juncture, we really felt that Paul needed his experience and his level-headed approach applied to making sure, as we go forward to get things done, that they're done thoroughly and efficiently, but with speed. And that's what I was there to speak with the president about.
And do you feel that he understood, that he agreed, that they're doing everything that they can do? Did you walk out feeling that way?
Yes, definitely. And I want to say that I've been feeling that way all the way along, that, this past year in particular, I shouldn't say all the way along, there've been some bumps, but, this past year since Brittany came home, there was a lot of effort applied. I did feel it could have gone a lot faster. And that was why I was so keen to speak to the president and to get that feeling, that sense of urgency. This is a solvable case. I did leave the meeting feeling that everybody is in accord. There are so many people who are trying to help in different parts of the government. This is the time to deploy them. This is the time to get everybody on board, so that we can move towards a solution. Paul needs to come home.
And Paul spoke to our Jennifer Hansler not long ago in one of the conversations he was able to have from prison. And he said something that I'm curious whether President Biden heard. I want to play first what Paul said to Jennifer.
I would ask President Biden to pull out the stops, cross the red lines, and do whatever needs to be done to get this case resolved and to get me home. If my life is not worth that effort, then I don't know what is.
I know it's got to be hard to hear your brother speaking like that. After that conversation, he was missing for a few days. I know you understand he had been sort of attacked by another prisoner. His glasses were broken. He appears to have been incommunicado for several days. Do you feel that President Biden knows all this, that he, if I'm trying to put the right words on it, but that he truly hears your brother?
Oh, I definitely do. In fact, not just my brother, but every American who's being held. I mean, this is a serious issue for him. And with Paul, every time he disappears like that, we wonder what's happened. I mean, occasionally he's been put in solitary, moved to different places. We never quite know what's going on. But I do think that the president feels acutely for every American held in a situation. I mean, these are foreign countries trying to coerce the United States, but they're also our family members, our loved ones. We hear their voices, but we can't see them and touch them. But it isn't, the president isn't a wizard, right? He can't just go, poof, I'm bringing home your brother. Russia is the one that has to let Paul go. And they're the ones that have been turning down offer after offer, and they are not negotiating in good faith.
Elizabeth, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me again.
Thank you so much for having me on.
And next, our special coverage of the Iowa caucuses continues. We're going to take you back to the ground as we'll soon be getting our first look at the entrance poll results from today's caucuses. which could tell us a lot.
This is the moment the 2024 presidential race here in the United States truly begins. Good evening. I'm Wolf Blitzer.
And I'm Erin Burnett, and welcome to CNN's special coverage of the Iowa caucuses. Wolf, we are standing by finally for the first votes.
Yeah, we've been waiting a long time. Today's caucuses have the power to not only shake up the Republican Party, but also to make or break several of the candidates. Now coming up, we're now expecting our first entrance poll results from Iowa. This will give all of us a glimpse into what caucus goers are actually thinking as they show up to their caucus sites. And the candidates are using the final hours to push for votes. Ron DeSantis is holding his last campaign event of the day in just a few minutes. Nikki Haley now heading to her last event, both trying to stop their biggest challenger, Donald Trump. We're also watching the weather very, very closely, which as of tonight is below zero and could have potentially a major impact on the turnout.
And we have a team of reporters inside the caucus sites where people are going to be showing up shortly and at the candidates' headquarters as we begin our special coverage here on CNN. So let's start with Kristen Holmes, who is joining us live from Donald Trump's caucus night headquarters. So, Kristen, there had been some concern from Trump's team, despite the massive lead that he's shown in the polls, in the Des Moines Register poll, that his reporters may feel complacent and stay home. We haven't heard so much from him today. So how are they feeling right now?
Well, look, right now, Erin, it's just a waiting game. They have been trying to temper expectations. You talk about them being concerned about people not showing up. It was really two-part. One was because of that 30-point lead that we saw in a number of polls. They do not want his followers or supporters to not show up because they think, oh, someone else will show up. The other part of this is the weather. Donald Trump himself has been very concerned about the weather, saying it's cold, asking allies, asking advisors, do they think this is going to affect the turnout? Remember the goal here. The goal is, yes, to win, but there's no real question among his advisors whether or not he's going to win. They believe he's going to win. But what they want to do is win by a definitive enough margin to actually set the tone for the primary season and also stem any momentum from his GOP rivals going into New Hampshire, particularly when it comes to Nikki Haley. So they feel good about tonight. They feel good about the fact that they believe that they are going to win. But whether or not they're going to hit a number like 30 or 28, like we saw in the Des Moines Register poll, that just seems unknown at this point. And I will note, even before we saw these weather reports showing these incredibly low temperatures, we were hearing a tempering of expectations from Donald Trump's advisors, essentially saying they didn't believe the margin was as large as those polls were showing. Again, they do believe he's going to win, but how big is that margin going to be? They are hoping for a definitive win in these caucuses tonight. But again, right now they feel like we have done everything we can. We have put the pieces in place. Now we just wait and see what the results are.
All right, Kristen, thank you. And let's go now to Steve Contorno because he's in Cedar Rapids. That's where Ron DeSantis will be taking the stage at his last event of the day before the votes are cast in a few moments. So, Steve, where is his campaign right now, and how are they prepared for tonight? How are they going to spend the evening?
Aaron, Ron DeSantis stepped foot for the first time in his life in Iowa in March of last year. He has since touched nearly every corner of the state, been to every single county, has had more than 100 stops. This visit today at the sports bar in Cedar Rapids, this will be his final campaign stop in the state of Iowa, and they are really hoping that that work that he has put in is going to pay off, and they believe that they have a ground game here that is built to withstand the conditions. They have 1,600 precinct captains. They have someone registered and signed up to speak at nearly every caucus, people including lawmakers from back in Florida, longtime friends, people who have worked for him for years. They will be speaking at caucuses trying to convince Republicans it is time to vote for them. He is also offering rides to people to get to the caucus sites. I've been told from one campaign official, quote, if it means shoveling a driveway, we will do it. And they may have to do it in parts of the state like Cedar Rapids. It is cold here. It is negative 15 degrees outside. The roads are very icy. Parts of Des Moines that we have visited, the streets are plowed. Around here, there are still roads that are very slick. We've talked to people who have had trouble getting their cars started, tires blown out. So that is going to be an obstacle for his campaign, but they believe that they have the infrastructure to do it. Wolf, back to you.
All right, thanks very much, Steve Contorno, on the scene for us. So joining us now, Ron DeSantis' campaign manager, James Othmeyer. James, thank you so much for joining us. How are you feeling, first of all, about your chances tonight? Any concern about potential turnout issues?
We feel very good. Over 6 months ago, we built the ground game that can withstand temperatures and weather conditions like tonight. We've got a chair in all of 99 counties. The governor has visited every one of those counties. We've got over 1,500 precinct captains, speakers lined up for every site. As was just mentioned, rides available. Our team is convicted, they're passionate, and they're ready to get out and vote. They've been looking forward to tonight. We know we're underdogs. We've been written off many times before, and we're very excited to beat the odds tonight.
The final Iowa polls, as you well know, showed Nikki Haley taking second place behind Trump. And longtime Iowa Republican strategist David Caucus saying he thinks Haley now has the momentum behind Trump. Are they all wrong, you think?
The polls have been consistently and notoriously wrong in predicting the outcomes here in Iowa. The voters know that here. They're dismissing these polls. It's hard to poll this caucus state with so few people voting, especially in weather conditions like this. So the voters are going to go and they're going to make the decisions tonight. All of you at home, it's not the polls that pick presidents. It's not the media that picks presidents. It's you, your voice. And we believe the voters, they want to look forward. They want a president who's a proven winner, who's results-oriented, and that is Ron DeSantis. He's the only candidate that's delivered on every single one of his promises, and then some, from universal school choice to record tax relief for families, keeping the state open during COVID. There's a reason why Florida's the #1 destination for new movers these days. It's the free state, and if he could take that vision to the White House, he would turn this country around.
James, as you know better than any of us, the DeSantis campaign has certainly poured a lot into this state. He's traveled, as he says, almost every day to all 99 counties. Where does he need to place for tonight to be a success? Is it within 10 points of Trump?
Listen, I'm not going to answer that directly. We're going to beat the odds tonight. Expectations have been set very high for the former president, with many polls on people predicting him winning by 30-plus points. Ron DeSantis has put in the work. He's spent the time here, but as you mentioned, Nikki Haley, she also has heightened expectations. She's spent more than any other candidate in this state. She's attacked Ron DeSantis with more money that's been spent against Donald Trump and Joe Biden combined. Governor Sununu, he's predicted a strong second for her, but I don't think that's what's going to happen tonight. I think it's going to be a major letdown, and I think, it's second place or bust for her right now, given the large amounts of money that her Wall Street-backed supporters have pumped into this state.
I noticed that Governor DeSantis will take an unconventional path after Iowa, planning to hit Governor Haley's home state of South Carolina instead of straight to New Hampshire, the next primary state, as all of us know. Why is that? What message are you trying to send there?
Yeah, we're going to hit South Carolina en route to New Hampshire. We're certainly not skipping New Hampshire. The governor's, message of freedom and liberty, it resonates very, very well in that state. But South Carolina has a lot of similarities to Iowa. There's a strong faith and family presence. The governor does very, very well there. We've got crowds exceeding capacity at our event space. We've got a strong ground game there. We believe our message is going to resonate very, very well. And, Nikki Haley, you got to win your home state if you're going to win the nomination. I don't think that's going to happen, and unfortunately, that's going to be the end of the road for her. It's also a conservative state, and as we've seen, almost half of Nikki Haley's supporters are Democrats and independents that are not going to come out in a Republican primary. Ron DeSantis has the proven credentials as a conservative, and he's the only candidate that can unify the party of both Trump supporters and people that would like to go a different direction, move forward, and fix this country for once and for all.
James Uthmeyer, let's stay in close touch. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And this important note to our viewers, tomorrow night I'll be moderating a CNN town hall with Ron DeSantis live from New Hampshire. That will start at 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. And coming up, Trump may be marching towards victory in Iowa, but what about his support nationwide? John King is standing by at the Magic Wall for us. Plus, Ron DeSantis really stepping up his attacks on Trump today. Listen.
But if you don't kiss that ring, then he'll try to trash you. You know what? You deserve a nominee that's going to put you first, not himself first.
So why did he wait so long to really hit Trump? We'll be right back.
Welcome back to our special coverage of the Iowa caucuses. Right now, standing by for the first votes in this election. And John King is back at the magic wall. So Trump has been dominating in the polls, obviously. Okay, but when you look in that and you look at the state, where are his supporters? And we always hear also about how Iowa is not representative of America. What does it tell us, Iowa, about the national picture?
It can tell us quite a bit, actually. So where are Trump supports? Let me do two fingers for the first time this election cycle. We'll go across the top of Iowa. We'll come across the bottom of Iowa. Now, why did I do that? Let's go back and take a look at 2016. This is the first election for Donald Trump, right? His hostile takeover of the Republican Party beginning. What happened within those lines? That's Ted Cruz and Donald Trump splitting rural evangelicals, farmers, your rural vote across the state. They split it, right? Donald Trump splits it with Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz wins the state. Donald Trump, though, comes in a close second, goes on to New Hampshire, and the rest is history. Well, those lines also matter when you come forward. Let's look at 2016. Let's look at the presidential election. What happened in those same areas? That's Trump country. Rural America becomes Trump country. That matters in Wisconsin. That matters in Michigan. That matters in Pennsylvania. That matters in Georgia. And so rural America becomes Trump country. That's 2016. It happens again in 2020, right? Rural America is Trump country. And so, yes, Iowa is a red state. It's more conservative, more white than the rest of America, but we still learn some important lessons about Trump's voters. If he does very well up here again and down here again tonight with Ron DeSantis running, think of DeSantis as Cruz, right? Does Trump blow him out, or do they split it again? That'll tell us about his strength with his bedrock base, rural voters.
All right, and do you see any vulnerabilities within the numbers so far?
So use the same map. This is Iowa 2020, right? Donald Trump wins overwhelmingly. Well, where's the blue? That's Joe Biden, right? This is Joe Biden in 2020, right? Circle these areas and come back, okay? Now let's go all the way back to 2016, all right? And look at the Republican presidential primary right there, okay? Those same areas, right? That's Ted Cruz, right? The areas Biden won, that's Ted Cruz. Why? It has suburbs. That's Marco Rubio.
Right.
It has suburbs. This is Marco Rubio. It has suburbs. Story County tonight, right? The college town of Ames, but Story County as well, north of Des Moines. Des Moines itself here is in Polk County right here. Donald Trump from the beginning has struggled in the suburbs. He beat Hillary Clinton in the general election in the suburbs. He got blown out by Joe Biden. So do we see, that's his vulnerability. That has been his kryptonite. Suburban America has been Trump's kryptonite. Do we see tonight that it's still the case, or do we see tonight that he is at least starting to rebuild that? Now, it's only Republicans, right? He has to win over independents, moderates, very soft Republicans when you get to Pennsylvania, when you get to Ohio, when you get to Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin. But do we see seeds of that tonight? That's what we'll look for. That has been his vulnerability. We'll see.
And how it can tell us a lot for the general election as well. All right, and while polling, of course, does suggest that Trump's nomination could be, and I mean, I'm putting all this emphasis on these words for a reason, because we just don't know the votes yet. But polls do suggest it could be a sure thing. His Republican rivals have been out on the campaign trail all day today, arguing that Trump is a deeply flawed candidate. Here they are.
We can't continue to be a country in disarray with the world on fire. And we can't do that with 4 more years of chaos. And we can't defeat Democrat chaos with Republican chaos. And we need a strong America that we can be proud of. And the only way we do that is if we make sure we elect someone who can win in November. We can't go through another nail-biter of an election. 75% of Americans have said they don't want another Trump-Biden rematch.
Donald Trump is the party of the Washington, D.C. establishment. They've lined up behind him. I'm the candidate that would be a change agent in Washington, D.C. I mean, Trump is running for his issues. You know, Haley's just doing what the donors want. I'm running on your issues and your family's issues.
We have to open our eyes, people. They're not going to let this man get anywhere near the White House again. But our America First movement cannot end with Trump, because it didn't start with Trump.
All right, everyone back with me here in Washington. So, Jane, sky-high expectations for Trump. But it was interesting because I know you've been looking at, Iowa pollsters and what they're, and we keep hearing that, oh, does he break 50?
Right.
But you're actually hearing 60.
I was just checking in with Patrick Ruffini, and he's thinking 60. And I think that's the issue here, is that it's actually how well could Trump do here. And it's interesting to see, DeSantis and see others talking about how they're going to be they're standing up against the establishment that is Donald Trump.
Right.
That argument's not going to work. We have heard for 8 years that Donald Trump is anti-establishment, that he's breaking with the Washington consensus, whatever that is. And to now start arguing that Donald Trump is now the member of the DC establishment, even if that's literally true, it will never become culturally true in this particular area. And so I think it really is about how well does Trump do. And I think it's so interesting to see how this has become about trying to sound like Trump while trying to beat Trump. And that's just impossible.
Right, right. It's like when you can have, what was it that you said?
Yeah.
Why have Diet Coke when you can have the real thing?
Basically, yeah. I mean, and I'm struck by how easy this has been for Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis went to all 99 counties in Iowa, and what did his supporter tell you in the previous hour? He's not the most captivating candidate. I mean, after 99 counties, you should be captivating, at least somewhat. And when I was talking to this Trump advisor earlier today, he said another ingredient in the secret sauce for Donald Trump this time around is the RNC basically, bent over for Trump. They allowed him to not participate in these debates. Trump
They've bent over backwards, changed the rules.
Trump spent more time in Manhattan, at the courthouse in Manhattan, than he did in Des Moines. And in the words of this Trump advisor, the RNC, and forgive me, I know a lot of kids are home from school today, has no balls. And we're back where we were in 2016, and during the Trump administration, the Republican Party is Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is the Republican Party.
But now what we're seeing is this expectations game that Jane was talking about, which is the Trump supporters, including one of his kids, is saying it's the media who is now saying that Donald Trump should get over 50%, because if we don't get over 50%, then we're going to be perceived as not doing as well as we should have done. So what they're trying to do now is say, okay, let's lower these expectations. We never really said over 50%, which of course they did. So, they're trying to put a cap on it somehow, just in case.
And there is a complacency. It's we talk about the weather, but also when your
Yes.
candidate's ahead. Jamie, it was interesting, an Iowa voter was speaking to one of our reporters on the ground. This is, in the Des Moines Register poll, a quarter of voters say they're still persuadable.
Right.
That's still a big number. I mean, it is the day of the caucus. They've been out there nonstop for a year and a half. So this voter says, I'm definitely not going to caucus for him, referring to Trump. He doesn't need me. He's got everybody else.
So two things. One is, in a caucus, your neighbors, your fellow Iowans, they're there to convince you to go with them. This is not, you don't get to go in. Let's just remind everyone, in a secret ballot, undecided last minute, and just go.
I don't think that's true.
You don't think
it's not the Democratic system in the Iowa caucuses
No,
for the
it's
Republicans.
secret.
You have a secret ballot.
You have a secret
You
ballot.
have a secret ballot.
But
So the
but
conversation is
The
public.
conversation is part of it, sure.
conversation
Yeah, there are
is-
speeches and it's communal, but you do actually get a secret ballot.
But it's a private vote.
I agree the RNC is a paper tiger. Democratic Party is both parties are incredibly weak institutions. I think, Gloria was saying earlier about how the thing that is killing, one of the things that has gotten college-educated Republicans to rally around Trump is the indictments and the criminal stuff that makes him into this martyr. I think it's an incredibly stupid reason to rally around a candidate, but I think it's true, and that narrative has helped a lot. There's another thing. Ron DeSantis' entire argument for running after the 2022 midterms was that Trump was going to be a weak candidate and couldn't win. And that looked like a plausible argument for a very long time. You now have matchups where you have Trump beating in 7 out of the 8 battleground states Joe Biden. So you can't, like Nikki Haley making this argument, I tend to agree with her. But electability is a sort of necessary but not sufficient argument. And when it looks like Trump could win anyway, it makes it very hard to compel people to say we have to go with
It is interesting. You were talking to, I know, a lot of your Trump sources, and it was interesting because I know everyone, and it's true. Every time that there's been something bad that happens to him legally, his poll numbers go up.
It is.
But that those advisors are telling you they are not worried about the competition. They are still worried about the court cases.
They're definitely worried about the court cases. The plan all along is to try to get these court cases pushed back beyond the 2024 election, past November, in the hopes that he'll win and be able to pardon himself or put an AG in there who will put these cases to bed and so on. But getting back to what Jonah was saying just a few moments ago, I mean, yes, we can talk about how the court cases have helped Donald Trump and solidified the Republican Party behind him. I think also at the same time, we have to get to what Wolf was just saying before the commercial break. Why did it take Ron DeSantis so long? I was there in 2012 when Rick Santorum came out of nowhere and won those Iowa caucuses. Those candidates were going at each other tooth and nail. This time, it just did not happen this time around. It is the weird.
They don't.
DeSantis and Nikki Haley went after each other in a conventional way, sniped at each other the other night of that CNN debate.
Yeah.
Trump got none of that.
They didn't get the most important adage, the enemy of my enemy.
Yeah,
Right. Should be my friend. And that was not the way it was. All right, all stay with me. We are just about 90 minutes away from the start of the Iowa caucuses. So what exactly will be taking place tonight? We're going to go through those details and get to the bottom of that. A special report is next. Plus, after tonight, on to New Hampshire. That is where Nikki Haley has the endorsement of the state's popular Republican Governor Chris Sununu. So what's he hearing about Haley's chances tonight? He'll be our guest. And welcome back to our special coverage of the Iowa caucuses. You're looking at live pictures right now from Cedar Rapids. That's where Governor Ron DeSantis is expected to take the stage in a moment. That will be his last event before voting starts. The caucuses are a complex process with a very significant impact on the entire election season. The results tonight could make or break DeSantis and Haley and change the entire race. So Tom Foreman's at the magic wall now to walk us through it, because these rules are incredibly complex, and the Republicans do caucusing differently than the Democrats. So how exactly is this going to work?
Hey, Aaron, absolutely all eyes are going to be on turnout tonight. 2016, whopping numbers. Already the prediction for tonight is generally going to be lower than that, but it could drop even lower if enough people have trouble getting to the polls. Nonetheless, let's talk about the procedure involved here. Typically what happens with the caucuses, they happen in all 99 counties, numerous sites in many counties. They start at 7 p.m. local time. Typically there are speeches given on representatives from the various candidates who say, vote for this person, vote for that person. Then people vote in secret on paper ballots. The GOP rules say you have to be a Republican, a registered Republican, to take part in this, even though you can register at the site if you want to tonight. But this is very much a party activity, not a state activity. Now, what happens afterward? Usually somebody gets a majority. That person is declared more or less the winner in the state. But this is not a winner-take-all proposition. It is proportional. So when you look at the 40 Iowa delegates they're competing for tonight, this many total delegates are at stake. This many are needed to win the nomination nationally. So if you get a proportion of this, you're just getting a tiny start on what you need to win the nomination. Nonetheless, it is considered an important measure of where you stand. Although we should note that when you look in the past, look at the winners of recent Iowa caucuses, none of whom became the candidate, none of whom became the president. So it's indicative, but it is hardly a concrete predictor of what's going to happen next. The real question in all of this, though, is who does show up? The weather in this state is going to be absolutely brutal this evening. There's a big worry about that, as our Jeff Zeleny reported. Another issue, they've changed the locations of some caucuses, so some people may be driving further than they normally would to reach the caucus. That may also have a dampening effect. You know, Iowans are used to this weather. They're used to this political system. They normally find a way to battle through it, but this is a very unique challenge, Aaron, and we will see who's up to it to cast their vote.
All right, man, all eyes on that, and of course on that turnout. What happens to it with this weather, Wolf?
Interesting. Aaron, stand by. I want to get back to our panel right now. Scott Jennings, the Republican candidates and their allies, we are now told, have spent more than $123 million in Iowa for tonight's caucuses. What does that say about the importance of what's about to happen?
Well, it's important to win the votes, but also what are they buying? Narrative. They're buying momentum. You know, they're buying a storyline here. So if you're Donald Trump, you're trying to buy dominance. If you're Nikki Haley, you're trying to buy momentum. And if you're Ron DeSantis in the position he's in now, you might have been trying to buy the comeback kid narrative. I would point out, inside that spending, the candidate who has by far been the biggest recipient of negative ads, Ron DeSantis. I think outside groups have spent about $48 million on negative ads against DeSantis, which is more than Trump and Biden have faced combined. So you could see, at least early on, that was the candidate they were worried about, and they did bury him with it.
Yeah, and as we say in politics, money talks, for sure. Jamal Simmons, Trump wrote this on his social media site earlier. He said, Nikki Haley can never win in the general election because she doesn't have MAGA and never will make America great again. Ron DeSanctimonious, he said, at least is MAGA light. But many Democrats, of course, say there's no real difference between any of these candidates, between Trump and his rivals. Listen to Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois.
Tonight's contest is simply a question of whether you like your MAGA Trump agenda wrapped in the original packaging or with high heels or with lifts in their boots.
You think voters are going to buy that argument?
About the lifts and the boots?
No, about the MAGA.
Yeah. So listen, I think the MAGA voters have consistently come out 2016, 2020, but they keep getting beaten. Right? So they show up for Donald Trump. He's narrowed the field for Republicans, right? But they go deep and they grab as many MAGA voters as they can. But the rest of America comes out and says, no, thank you. That's what we saw in 2020. We saw it in 2022. We saw it in the midterms in 2018. So when it comes into a general election, I just think those voters don't have the majority of the American sentiment. One thing was interesting about what you said earlier when you were reading the quote from Donald Trump. Ron the Sanctimonious, right? He has a nickname for him. He did not have a nickname for Nikki Haley. If Nikki Haley surprises people tonight, look for her nickname, look for Trump to begin to do to her what he's done to every other candidate when he trains his sights on her and trains the forces of that MAGA crowd we've been talking about, gets them focused on attacking her. It's going to be brutal.
Well, can I make a comment about that question? The question and the thought exercise going on in the Republican Party about what if Trump did not get the nomination? Would he actually support a different Republican for president? Would he tell his people to stay home? There is a world here where he's the only electable Republican because he's the only one who can get his base to turn out. I agree with you. It's not been quite enough in some of these cycles. But if another Republican got the nomination and he went rogue, where would that leave them?
Which he did in Georgia.
We've seen it.
In the Senate after. So we've seen this before. And look, I think he's already, to your point, Jamal, I think he's already begun doing a little bit of this with Nikki Haley. He hasn't given her a nickname, but he's begun floating around the birther theory like he did with Obama, very effectively in some corners against Nikki Haley. I was just, in the break, I was texting with David Kochel, who you mentioned earlier. He's done 40 years of Iowa caucuses, worked on 6 presidential campaigns. His prediction is Trump under 50, which is a bad night for Trump if that's the case, and Haley squeaking past DeSantis. Momentum beats mechanics. And, you know, to me what was interesting is the two DeSantis surrogates we've had on the air since we've been on, the donor and his campaign managers, both alluded to Ron DeSantis did in Florida 100% of what he promised. I think that's one of the things that's actually hurt him, that he had a Florida legislature that was a rubber stamp and that passed all of the crazy ideas, banning books, banning AP history, going after Disney, taking away the Disney special district, all of these things that made people look back and say, we don't want this nationally.
Adam, give me a final thought.
By the way, J.B. Pritzker's statement really bothers me, if I can just say that. For him to say that it's just what flavor of MAGA you want. Donald Trump is uniquely dangerous to this country. And until the Democrats understand that and say that, they don't get the fact that we talk about there has to be a unnatural alliance, an unholy alliance between the sane right, the center, and the left, when he's saying Nikki Haley is the same as Donald Trump.
Adam Kinzinger, thanks very, very much. Nikki Haley hitting the airwaves in New Hampshire, releasing a new ad tonight that targets Trump. Watch this.
The 2 most disliked politicians in America, Trump and Biden, both are consumed by chaos, negativity, and grievances of the past.
Plus, we'll take you back to Iowa, where people are starting to show up for the caucuses tonight. What does it tell us about the turnout that's about to unfold?
And welcome back to our special coverage, the first votes of the 2024 presidential election. The Iowa caucuses will get underway in just about 2 hours. Right now, the candidates are making their final pitch to voters. This is Ron DeSantis right now on stage in Cedar Rapids. And late tonight, after the caucuses are done, these candidates will turn their attention to New Hampshire. That is where the second voting contest will take place a week from tomorrow. Joining me now, New Hampshire's Republican Governor Chris Sununu, who, of course, has endorsed Nikki Haley. Governor, I appreciate your time. So we're in the final hours here before the Iowa caucuses get underway. Are you hearing anything that's changing your expectations of what Haley will do tonight and what success for her looks like in Iowa?
Well, look, I think there's already a lot of success for Nikki Haley in Iowa because she didn't set expectations, right? Trump and DeSantis set expectations. They were both going to win. And again, there can only be one winner. Obviously, you know, the caucuses are really geared toward Donald Trump. He's the most likely, has the most likely chance of winning there. But Nikki Haley is surging in the polls, right? And so anything that she does at this point out is just a great job for her in Iowa and definitely gives her a little more momentum, a little more gasoline on the fire as she hits the ground here in New Hampshire tomorrow. It's a one-on-one race, right? It's Trump versus Haley, and that's kind of how it's playing out. She's surging. She's the only one with momentum, the only one, when you talk about poll numbers moving, she's the only one across America anyone's talking about right now because folks are galvanizing around that, which was always the goal, right? Just to narrow the number of candidates down. It's happened faster than we thought. It's really become that one-on-one race. She's got all the momentum, which means there's a lot of possibilities ahead.
You know, in the Des Moines Register poll, though, it was interesting. They talked about troubling signs for caucus goers' enthusiasm for Haley, talked about her support being on shaky ground, and then kind of got to the point, the quote from the pollster, her enthusiasm numbers, I think, are on the edge of jaw-dropping, and they seem at odds with a candidate moving up. Do you have that concern about that?
Yeah, well, look,
yes, momentum and all the conversation, you're right, but those enthusiasm numbers are still there.
Sure, but there's never been an expectation that Nikki Haley was going to absolutely win second place. It looks like she could. That's amazing, right? That's beating expectations without a doubt. So again, if that all kind of comes to fruition, that's great. She really has a chance not just to come in second. We've solidified that. She has a chance to beat Donald Trump, something nobody thought was possible just a couple months ago. Beat him right here in New Hampshire. So, however she comes out of Iowa, it's going to be terrific because there was no bar set there like those other two had set for themselves. I think Ron DeSantis has even said he's not even coming to New Hampshire. I mean, at this rate, Ron's where's he going to go? South Carolina?
He's going to be there tomorrow. Well,
so
he's going to be there tomorrow night doing a town hall with Wolf Blitzer. So I can assure you he'll be in New Hampshire tomorrow. We're promoting it. He's coming tomorrow. I want to ask you about something Trump did, though, that you were a part of, Governor. A social media post today, which is where he's been spending most of his time. He began by saying that you did not have, in his words, the guts to run for president. He called you politically dead. He then went on to say something that I want to quote in full. Talking about you and others. He is now the very unpopular governor of New Hampshire who endorsed Nikki Birdbrain Haley, who is seldom able to beat crooked Joe Biden in the polls and will never beat the Democrat Party in reality. Sununu is Chris Christie without the weight. He does lots of television and just spews out false fact after fact. Now, Governor, I'm not reading this to make you smile or to make you groan or to even have you, deign to respond to it. I'm asking you for this reason. You have blamed Trump's words for inciting the insurrection at the Capitol. You've said his words matter, and this is just a case in point that they have not changed. But you have said you'd vote for him if he's the nominee. How do you justify that to yourself?
Oh, it's easy because the country can't take Joe Biden anymore. Look, I don't think Trump's going to be the nominee. We're working hard to make sure that doesn't happen, of course. But at the end of the day, Joe Biden has made this actually where Trump could actually beat him. Again, something no one thought was possible 6 months ago. This is how bad President Biden is. When you talk to middle American families that are getting crushed by inflation, that can't stand the fact that we're not securing the border, that we're told that was going to be discipline, fiscal discipline from Joe Biden, and nothing, and it hasn't happened. This wokeism is going everywhere. It's really affecting families. So, yes, of course, at this point, we'll take almost anything to get Joe Biden out of there.
But your bottom line is then that you think Joe Biden is a greater threat to America than Donald Trump.
Joe Biden has proven to be a much worse leader than anyone on the Republican primary at this point. That's why, look, Nikki Haley's great because she doesn't have a nail biter with Joe Biden. She beats him by 10, 15 points, and all the Republicans win. That's why we're getting behind Nikki Haley.
All right, Governor Sununu, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
You bet.
All right, and still to come, people beginning to make their way to caucus sites, and we're going to take you inside one precinct where there is excitement building tonight. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to our special coverage of the Iowa caucuses. The voting set to start very soon, with some voters now telling CNN their minds aren't necessarily made up, at least not yet. So tonight could be crucial. I want to go straight to CNN's Boris Sanchez. He's at a caucus location in Des Moines where the doors are now open. Boris, walk us through what you are seeing and what will happen tonight.
Wolf, not a lot to show you right now from the Viking Theater here in Grandview University in the suburbs of Des Moines, Iowa. But in just a few short hours, we're going to watch the caucus process unfold, a window into democracy. At any moment, the precinct chairs are about to arrive. And as soon as they get here, they're going to start setting all of this up. I'm going to give you a look behind me. Essentially, what they'll do is lay out the ballots that they've prepared for the evening. And then as people start rolling in, the doors will close at 8 p.m. Eastern, and that is when the process begins. They're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. They're going to then elect a caucus chair for this precinct. About 300 people expected at 2 precincts at this site at Grandview University. Then the campaign representatives are going to give short 3 to 5 minute speeches in favor of their preferred candidate. After that, the ballots are then passed out, and that is when we will see the very first action in the 2024 presidential cycle. Obviously very exciting. So why does this precinct, this area matter? It's in Polk County, again, the suburbs of Des Moines. I've been texting with Trump campaign officials who tell us that they're going to be watching this very closely, in part because it'll give them an indication on how Donald Trump will do in the suburbs, specifically with suburban women. And if he fares well, especially against Nikki Haley here, it could mean a good sign for the president, former president, I should say, going into the general election. Wolf.
All right, we'll stay in very close touch with you. Thank you, Boris. Up next, our special coverage of the Iowa caucuses will continue as we are now standing by for our first look at the entrance poll results from today's contest.
And the breaking news, the doors at caucus sites across Iowa are beginning to open at this hour. Good evening. I'm Aaron Burnett in Washington.
And I'm Wolf Blitzer in New York. Welcome to CNN's special coverage of the Iowa caucuses. We are counting down to the first votes of this election, a truly, truly historic night.
And Wolf, there are 4 major contenders, all hoping to score a win to get on the board here for the 2024 campaign. And we are now less than an hour from the first clues about the outcome from our entrance polls of people going to those caucuses. Trump, Haley, DeSantis, and Ramaswamy all making last-minute appeals before the caucuses actually convene. Trump, of course, is the heavy favorite, but it is important to remember that there are things you just don't know and how it will impact. The dangerous record cold weather could affect turnout in a big way. That could have a serious effect on the race for second place, which really could determine whether DeSantis or Haley are a real threat to Trump, Wolf, as the race moves past Iowa.
And we have a team of our correspondents inside caucus sites and at the candidates' headquarters as we begin our special coverage. CNN's Jeff Zeleny is in Des Moines for us. Jeff, this is a big test, a huge test tonight for Trump. How strong of a grip does he have there?
Well, if he has had a tremendous grip on this Republican Party, but tonight will be the first time that voters have a chance to weigh in and decide whether they would like him to be essentially have a rematch with President Joe Biden. Of course, Iowa is the beginning of the road. The question is, by the end of this evening, will it be the end of the road for some candidates? There is no doubt that the Trump organization has been preparing for this evening for months and months. They have built a significant ground organization. I have seen it. I've been inside their headquarters. It is dramatically different than it was in 2016 when many of their supporters admitted not exactly knowing what an Iowa caucus was. Now they do know that. They have precinct captains in all of the 1,657 precincts that are spread out across the state. Of course, the other campaigns are also working extensively on the ground. Well, but let's think of a little bit of history here. The Trump campaign has been really trying to manage its expectations. They are expecting to win. Virtually every Republican here also expects Trump to win, but the question is by how much? The biggest winning margin in the Iowa caucuses so far is 13 percentage points. That came back in 1988 with Bob Dole over Pat Robertson. So the Trump campaign is saying that would be a win. But there's no doubt that the bar is slightly higher than that, given the fact that he was up 28 points in the latest Iowa poll in yesterday's Des Moines Register. So there certainly are high expectations. But, Wolf, as we talk to Republican advisors looking at this race and the race as it goes forward, really a central question is, does the former president surpass that 50% mark? If he does, that certainly sends him on perhaps a glide path to the nomination. There have long been 3 tickets out of Iowa. Wolf, depending on the order tonight, if Ron DeSantis would have to come in would happen to come in third place, there could just be 2 tickets out of Iowa. But for now, at least, at this hour, campaigns are still calling all of their supporters, trying to make sure that they will get out to the caucus sites now in just 2 hours' time. Wolf.
All right, Jeff Zeleny reporting for us. Jeff, thank you very much. Jessica Dean is joining us right now from West Des Moines, where she's with the DeSantis campaign tonight. Jessica, as we mentioned, we're waiting on those very first entrance polls to come out of Iowa. What will the DeSantis team be looking for?
Well, Wolf, they're certainly looking to see just how turnout will shape up tonight and if the weather and how the weather might impact that. As one advisor was saying to me, will it be geographical? Will it be the fact that people in rural areas can't get out on the roads? Will it be age-related? Older people, might they not want to get out in the cold? They just don't know. That is a big X factor tonight. But what I'm also told is that DeSantis really spent this day feeling, what I'm told is relaxed, ready to roll, ready to go, very loose, that he feels good and optimistic about going into tonight. They're also relying on this extensive ground game that has been touted for months now, put together by the super PAC aligned with DeSantis, Never Back Down. They told me they've knocked on some 940,000 doors across this state. They have precinct captains all across the state in all the various counties. They're hoping that could be a difference maker tonight, especially when you throw in the weather and what that might be doing when it is harder perhaps for people to get out, trying to make sure that their supporters make it to this caucus site. But as Jeff noted, Wolf, nobody has more riding on Iowa than Ron DeSantis. He's placed so much of his energy, his money here, and he wants a strong showing tonight. Will the voters give it to him? That's what we're watching for.
We're watching. We will stay in close touch with you. Jessica Dean reporting for us. Thank you. Kylie Atwood is over at Nikki Haley's Iowa headquarters tonight. Kylie, what are the expectations that you're hearing from the Nikki Haley camp?
Well, listen, Wolf, Haley's campaign and Nikki Haley herself are saying that they are hoping for a strong showing here in Iowa. They aren't defining exactly what that means. They aren't saying if that means coming in number 2 or number 3 here in Iowa, where she is battling it out with Ron DeSantis to try and become the one who is competing with former President Trump throughout the rest of the Republican primary. Now, one of the things that Haley's camp felt was important today was the fact that she got out and she actually saw voters here in Iowa in a number of events across the state, all within driving distance to Des Moines, of course, because the weather has been so awful over the last few days. They didn't want to get stuck in another part of the state. But one of the things that surprised me when I was at those events earlier today is that there were a number of undecided voters who were in the audience. They were listening to Nikki Haley. Some of them are looking at New Hampshire. They see she has momentum there. That's one of the reasons that they're thinking about supporting her here, because it could boost her into New Hampshire in a really formidable way. But not all Iowans feel that way. Of course, some said that Iowans make their own decisions, and Nikki Haley telling them over the course of the last few days that Iowa is going to set the tone for the Republican primary.
Kylie Atwood reporting for us. Aaron, back to you.
All right. And you know, listening to Kylie, John, talking about the voters trying to make that calculation. Do you vote for Haley because it might help in New Hampshire and create momentum and sort of the chess game that people are playing? But who is doing well where when you look across Iowa and you look at that Haley-DeSantis battle?
So we'll see if the voters shock us. But right now we assume, based on all the data, it's a race for second place. So here's one way to look at it. You go back to the 2016 map. Again, Donald Trump came in second in Iowa. The rest was history after that. But this is when it was still competitive. This is the test tonight for Haley, DeSantis, anyone else running against Donald Trump. Can you prove he's vulnerable? Can you make it competitive? So the gold counties here, that's Ted Cruz. Especially for Ron DeSantis, rural America has become Donald Trump's foundation. Can you compete with him among farmers and evangelicals out here? For Nikki Haley, it's a test, too. Can you come in a strong second or third in these counties to prove, the knock on her? She's only getting moderates and independents. She can't win conservative voters. It's a test for her. One other way to look at it, though, if you come in and look at it this way, if you look at the, oops, that doesn't want to work for me there. All right, let me come out of this and come out and then sometimes she gets itchy, is the total population of the state, right? You see these lighter red counties, might be hard to see at home. Those are places Marco Rubio won. Right? In the place, that's where you have big numbers. People don't have to drive as far to the polling places. That is Haley's bread and butter. She must win in the suburbs. And if DeSantis is going to prove, forget she doesn't really have momentum, he has to chip into that too.
All right. So then when you get to that voter that Kylie was just talking about, what does all of this mean for the primary calendar and this situation that you're in where, even if Trump is ahead, you've got this race for second, and how long does that continue?
The how long does it continue will likely depend on the margins tonight and then what happens next. Look, Iowa is first, right? Like it or not, some people don't like it, it's first. Then we go to New Hampshire a week from now. Then we go out first week of February to Nevada. There's a primary and a caucus. The caucus gives the delegates. Nikki Haley might win that primary. Doesn't really matter for delegates. Trump has the state party pretty wired. They think he's going to get that. Then you go to Nikki Haley's home state here, February 24th. So 6 weeks from now, we will have 4 contests in the books. If Donald Trump is 4-0, we really might not have to talk about Super Tuesday. We might not have to go into March. If Donald Trump is 4-0, he's going to be impossible or near impossible to stop. So that is the challenge. Can somebody come out of here with enough momentum to change the calculations in those 3?
All right, so we're obviously in Washington tonight, but you have spent an extraordinary amount of time in Iowa over the past months, talking in, just incredibly in-depth, substantive conversations. You've recorded some of them, but a lot of time with voters. So what are they saying?
Well, about half of the party loves Trump and wants Trump, and about half of the party doesn't. Doesn't mean they wouldn't vote for him in November. Most of them, not all of them, would. But so what happens tonight? Let's start out here. Sioux City, Woodbury County. Donald Trump won this county in 2016, 8 years ago. Priscilla Forsyth was one of the people who was drawn to this new insurgent outsider Donald Trump.
Right.
Tired of the tweets, tired of the toxic talk. She's for Nikki Haley, and again, that's what makes this area a big test for Haley. Listen why.
But there was always something about DeSantis I didn't like, and I couldn't put my finger on it. I liked the way Haley came across in the first debate. Usually, to me, the debates don't make a big difference, but they kind of did this time.
You hear that a lot, Aaron. We heard that a lot over the last 5 months from women in Iowa who are warming to Haley, although Priscilla last night was trying to get some information about caucusing from the campaign. She raised some serious doubts about their organization. The Haley campaign organization said she couldn't get the information that she needed. Now let's come here. Now let's come here to the Des Moines suburbs. Polk County, next to it is Dallas County. Suburban moms here. If Nikki Haley is going to succeed, suburban women who turned away from Trump in 2018, 2020, and 2022. We'll introduce you to 2 here. Betsy Sarcone, Jocelyn Taylor. Both working moms, both single moms, both entrepreneurs, both saying toxic tweets, toxic language, goodbye Donald Trump. They're for Haley.
If DeSantis were to gain momentum and gain that, a big part of the vote, that I would go with him in order to have somebody viable to take on Trump. Like I said, my heart is with Haley. That is where I would really like those votes to go. However, if it came down to it, and like I said, kind of falling on my sword to go with DeSantis, I would do it.
I see Nikki Haley helping us identify back with what our culture is, what our vision is, and what our mission is as a united states, not a divided states.
Heard the emphasis on united there from
Yes.
Jocelyn. A lot of women like that. They just think Trump is too divisive. A lot of them love his policies, loved his policies. They just can't take it anymore. Betsy Sarcone, you heard the chess game there. I'd vote for DeSantis if I thought we could all consolidate over one candidate.
Right.
She's been going back and forth. She told us she's going in Haley tonight, in part because of that last poll showing her in second place. So 2 more voices. Both of these voters loved Trump's policies. Both of these voters voted for Trump in 2020. Different opinions today. Chris Mudd and Shannon Ebersole. Listen.
I think that I would lean towards Haley. I think that in the face of people calling names, in the face of people yelling and screaming in front of her, she held her composure.
I am. I haven't seen anything that would change the way I think about Trump. I think he's the best guy to lead our country, and I don't see anybody else on our side that can really pick up where he left off 4 years ago.
Where they live, Aaron, where they live on the map is what makes it so fascinating. Shannon Ebersole, this is the 2016 map. She's way down here. Of the 99 counties, Ringgold is 98 in terms of population. It is a tiny county. Look at how many people voted there. She's going to be outnumbered. This is a very conservative county. She's going to stand up for
106 people.
106 people voted for Trump, and he got 32% of the vote. She's going to stand up there and be for Nikki Haley, where she's outnumbered. Can Nikki Haley prove herself in rural Trump country? That's one big test of someone who thinks to move on. Chris Mudd lives up here in Blackhawk County. Ted Cruz won this county, right? You've got the small city, but then you have a big suburban area out here. Pretty close, right? But Trump was a distant third. I mean, not distant third. They're all lumped together there. This is Trump country now. Can Trump prove start to rebuild in the suburbs. Chris Mudd says nothing is going to sway his mind. He said Trump would have to get out of the race for him to change his mind.
It is amazing, though, just to emphasize here, as we got like 1,585 votes. That's nothing. 50 votes is not. I mean, you know that when you talk about a turnout expected tonight of what, 120,000 they're saying is expected, that is going to determine so much for the whole country. I'm not saying it good or bad, but it is just.
It is what it is. Whether you like it or don't like it, Trump and the Republicans kept it there. You're right. Look at that. Shy of 52,000 votes, and he won. 45,000 votes, and he came in second place. Then he went on to win New Hampshire, and again, the rest is history.
The rest is history now. All right. And next, I'm going to talk to a longtime pastor who prayed with DeSantis before last week's debate and was supposed to speak for DeSantis tonight. He was caucusing for him, committed, but he has just switched his support to Haley. Why the change of heart? Plus, Trump's team expressing concerns that the cold could affect turnout and hurt them. So what's the mood inside the former president's headquarters right now as voters head for those caucus sites? We'll take you there live. And welcome back to CNN's special coverage of the Iowa caucuses, where we're just moments away from the first entrance polls. That'll give us the first sense of who is voting and maybe how they're voting. Just an hour away from the caucuses starting, people's minds are still changing. We know about a quarter of voters had said they were undecided on that Des Moines Register poll. And we're learning from our own Eva McKend how one retired pastor who personally prayed with Ron DeSantis before primary events and had been set to speak for him at his caucus event tonight has had a change of heart. He's now for Nikki Haley, and he is with us now. Pastor John Palmer, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us and to share your thoughts on this, because obviously it's not a decision you came to lightly. And what was the reason? What made you change your mind right now when you're finally at the day of voting?
That's a really good question. Thank you, Aaron. As I view leadership, I think of two pillars that are really important in leadership. One is character, and the other is competency. And both of those are really, really important. And as I looked at the cast of candidates, I came to the conclusion that Haley was the best at both of those, that she has good, solid character. She's a person of integrity and honesty and transparency. And she also has the competency, the skills to be able to lead, to bring people together, to cast vision, to work with people across the aisle, and to be able to help build America and help us move forward. And so as I looked at those two pillars, character and competency, she seemed to me to be the one that came to the top in both of those.
So I know, obviously, you spent time with Governor DeSantis, and you had prayed with him before events, including at that debate last week. And I understand that was a major turning point for you at the CNN debate. You were there, and I know you did pray with DeSantis beforehand, and then you were in the room. So you actually watched the whole debate in person. Mm-hmm. Was there a specific moment that made you see those issues of character and competency differently?
You know, Yes, I had the privilege prior to the debate to pray with the governor and his wife, along with a couple of other pastors. And I really have a great deal of respect for Governor DeSantis. But it was during the debate that I began to get a sense that Governor Haley really was able to articulate a vision that is very positive and forward-thinking, and that she has the skills to lead. And as I looked at both of them together, standing just a few feet apart from each other, it just became clear to me that even with her eyes and her voice and the way she spoke, that she convinced me that she could be a better leader for our country. And nothing against Governor DeSantis. I'm sure he would do a great job too. I just feel like she edges him out in this area of competency, the ability to lead. I believe they both have both people of good character, so that's not an issue for me. But it was in the area of competency. Even during the debate, she seemed to address the issues head on and with a greater clarity than the Governor DeSantis did.
So I know that you obviously told the DeSantis campaign today that you had changed your mind. You made that call and did that. What did they say?
They were very gracious. They were very gracious, and they understand that this is a process. And I'm just one person in one of the 1,657 precincts, and they were very gracious and kind, as I thought they would be. And I was with Governor Haley yesterday, and then this morning, and was able to connect with her for a bit, pray with her, and I feel really confident in my decision to support her tonight.
Well, Pastor Palmer, I really appreciate your time for explaining all of that to us and to our viewers as people get ready to watch you and the others in your state, all of your people in Iowa to start this vote and see how this actually goes tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. God bless you, and thank you for all that you do.
All right. Thank you so much, Pastor Wolf.
Aaron, thank you very much. Let's get some reaction to what we just heard, and Anna Navarro is with us. You heard the pastor. He was behind Ron DeSantis, even prayed with him, as we heard, but now he's going to caucus for Nikki Haley. What do you think?
What do I think? God forbid I question a man of faith, but I think he wants to be with a winner. And I think he feels the momentum changing for Nikki Haley. It's hard for me to imagine that he's supported Ron DeSantis all along, and now, on the day of, he decides he's not competent. Well, it took you this long after you prayed with a man to realize he's not competent. I think it's very obvious. He's reading the tea leaves, he's reading the numbers, and people like to be with a winner. It's a dangerous thing for DeSantis because we've all worked in campaigns, and when a campaign starts to smell of defeat, it is very hard to Lysol over that smell.
That's an interesting point. Adam Kinzinger, let me get your reaction to what DeSantis told the Iowa voters about Trump's endorsements of Republicans. Listen to this.
You can be the most worthless Republican in America, but if you kiss the ring, he'll say you're wonderful. You can be the strongest, most dynamic, successful Republican and conservative in America, but if you don't kiss that ring, then he'll try to trash you. You know what? You deserve a nominee that's going to put you first, not himself first.
You think DeSantis would have been helped if he had spoken like that earlier?
Yes. I mean, absolutely. Like, this is the line. If he's not going to go after Donald Trump for anything else, if I could go back 4 months and advise Ron DeSantis, it would be like, do this. It's not like you're going to be buddies. You're not going to be Trump's VP. Like, go after him. You know, Donald Trump he's a complainer. He's a victim of everything. He's a bellyacher. He's a crybaby. Those are the kind of things that bother him to hear and bother his people to hear. That attack line should have been part of DeSantis's mantra from day one. Instead, he's doing it the night before the caucus. I'm glad he said it, but I don't think that's going to change.
Well, don't you think he said it as a direct response to Marco Rubio, the senior senator from his state in Florida, endorsing Donald Trump, the guy who labeled him Little Marco in 2016?
That's your state. You guys are a little crazy over there. Got a little internal battles going on.
Everybody hates each other in Florida. I mean, there's no love lost between DeSantis, Rubio, Scott.
Yeah, it's unique.
Any of them. You know, Jamal, the final Des Moines Register poll, as we noticed, it's very interesting. More than 60%, look at this, more than 60% of likely caucus goers said that if Trump was convicted of a crime before the general election, it would not necessarily impact their support. 19% said it would make them more likely to actually support him.
Yeah, you know, Wolf, it's so disturbing. We had a little conversation off camera about the last president who got a majority of the vote, George W. Bush. And when I think back to the Republican Party of that era, on this Martin Luther King Day, when we had Republicans who would appoint people of color to jobs, and they would support voting rights, and they reached out to Latinos. And now the energy in the Republican Party is around somebody who's been indicted so many times on so many issues, but it's also around taking away affirmative action in schools, taking away diversity and inclusion initiatives. Charlie Kirk from Turning Point is talking about rethinking Martin Luther King and wants to attack Martin Luther King, and he said, it just says how far we've come from a Republican Party that was a part of building a stronger America where all of us get to participate, and one now that seems like it wants to take America away from so many of us at a day. Particularly, we have the Iowa caucus on the day of Martin Luther King Day. And we're not talking about these ideas of how to bring America together. We have these divisive ideas that are really powering the debate right now.
Very divisive indeed. Scott Jennings, we're only minutes away now from receiving our first entrance poll results. So this is very significant. We were polling people as they go into the caucuses. Normally on election nights, we have exit poll results, but we're going to get entrance poll results very, very soon. And we're going to be looking at very specific numbers, specific groups. What are you looking for?
Well, what do people with college degrees do? Because Nikki Haley needs this group. But there's some evidence that they've been rebounding for Trump. That's number one. Obviously, the metro versus rural splits is number two. I'm not sure we're asking this tonight, but I'm sort of interested in the first-time caucus goer. The Trump people have been putting a lot of stock into their first-time caucus goer recruitment. And although they don't have a long demonstrable history of showing up at the caucus, obviously, Trump's people tend to be the most enthusiastic. I'd like to see if they brave the weather tonight and turn out. And then the final thing really is just the margin. Does Donald Trump match what the polling says he ought to do? Does Ron DeSantis outkick his coverage? Does Nikki Haley's dependence upon Democrats and independents cause her to fall short? All of those things will play into the margins, and we'll have a big to-do about how we view New Hampshire and South Carolina beyond.
And let me get your thoughts, because you live in Florida, Anna. Marco Rubio, your senator in Florida, he just endorsed Donald Trump over his home state governor of DeSantis. What do you make of that?
Well, what can I say to you? One more time when Marco Rubio has shown a tremendous lack of loyalty. I remember when Nikki Haley, who everybody thought was going to be in the Jeb Bush camp in 2016, endorsed Marco Rubio. And she endorsed him when it really mattered, right before the South Carolina primary. Look, I don't think anybody is going to go out in below freezing weather, rush to the caucus because Marco Rubio endorsed Trump or did not endorse somebody. But I do think it makes Marco look very little. And I don't mean his physical stature. I mean his loyalty, his lack of follow-through, his lack of principle. He is now kissing the ring, as Ron DeSantis said, of a man who made mincemeat out of him and was incredibly personally offensive to him during 2016.
Do these endorsements really make a difference?
I think they play into the overall narrative. And for Donald Trump, the narrative has always been inevitability. And when you have so many elected officials, senators, congressmen, local people, county Republican chairs coming forward, when you have notable people saying, I'm with Trump, it is another log on that fire of inevitability. Of course, the biggest log would be if you blow everybody out tonight by 25 or 30 points. So I don't think any individual endorsement is make or break for him, but just the drumbeat of how they've rolled them out. It's been a number of them over the last few days. I think they probably have a whole bunch ready for the next couple of weeks. It has been a systematic and frankly textbook way to keep the narrative alive that he's the front runner and nobody's getting close.
And I have no clue why. Like, you're a U.S. senator. These people used to be strong, kind of independent people. Why do you feel the pressure to endorse now? Why does Marco Rubio feel like he's under such pressure to endorse Donald Trump? I mean, I don't know when he's up again, but he's probably got some time in the Senate. It blows my mind, but there's this like fear now. You know, it's like back in the day, the Roman emperors used to invite the Senate in and basically throw food at them just to humiliate them, and the Senate would take it. It's almost like that's happening
The reason
now
to do it now
is
to do it before Nikki Haley comes in second and goes into New Hampshire. The reason to do it now is to be able to stick it to Ron DeSantis, who there is, as I just said, no love lost between, before Ron DeSantis is defeated. So that's...
I like that part. That like stick it to Ron part, that's kind of interesting.
But also, don't we know that Donald Trump is keeping count of who's with him and who's not with him? And he's going to punish the people who aren't with him, and so he knows. And so, you know, people are jumping on the train because they got to be on the train.
Don't count out their constituents either. I mean, the good people of Florida and a lot of Republicans nationally want these endorsements to come in. They're hearing from their people, too.
And we'll hear more, I'm sure. All right, guys, stand by. Tomorrow night, this is important, right here on CNN, I'll be moderating a town hall with Ron DeSantis live from New Hampshire. That starts 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. Up next, Trump expressing confidence tonight. Listen to this.
We're going to have a tremendous night tonight. The people are fantastic.
We're going to take you to Trump's campaign headquarters. That's coming up next. Plus, the excitement building as we count down until the doors close and folks start caucusing. Our Brian Todd is actually inside one of the caucus sites where folks are ready to make history. We'll be right back. We're back with CNN special coverage of the Iowa caucuses. In less than 30 minutes from now, we will get the first entrance poll results of the night, our first glimpse into how Iowans will vote. And we are also standing by tonight for more information, all this coming as Donald Trump's team is trying to temper expectations amid late momentum from Nikki Haley and an aggressive ground game from Ron DeSantis. CNN's Kristen Holmes is joining us live right now. She's over at Trump's caucus night headquarters in Iowa. How is the Trump campaign feeling right now, Kristen?
Well, Wolf, the campaign is feeling very confident. They believe he's going to win, but of course the question is how much is he going to win by? We've all seen the polls that show him leading by roughly 30 points. Whether or not he can get a margin that large still remains to be seen. I've talked to a number of senior advisors who have tried to play down that number, saying that anything over 12% would be historic. Anything over 12% would be something that they would celebrate. And right now, it really is just a waiting game. They have done everything they can. They've built out a robust ground game here in Iowa to try and get as many people to the caucus sites as possible. Now, just waiting to see who actually shows up. Donald Trump has been urging his supporters not to get complacent with those poll numbers, not to be affected by the weather. We know that his team had arranged for cars to drive people to caucus locations if they couldn't get there. We also know that at certain points they had taught people how to actually caucus. I think Scott was just mentioning to you that one of the big groups that they targeted were these first-time caucus goers. They need them to show up tonight and actually caucus. That is a huge part of these numbers that you are seeing. And again, yes, they believe he's going to win, but they want the biggest margin possible because they want to stop any momentum Nikki Haley has going into New Hampshire and set the tone for this primary season. Aaron?
All right, Kristen, thank you very much. And so everyone here to talk about where we are. I mean, Jim, the big question is how many tickets are there out of Iowa? We keep talking about this. You know, if it goes as the polls indicate and Trump wins, can Haley and DeSantis both move forward?
Yeah, I mean, typically there are 3 tickets out of Iowa, but we've been talking about this being a race for second place. This is almost like a race for survival for Ron DeSantis. If he finishes behind Nikki Haley by a substantial margin, his ticket out of Iowa might be back to Tallahassee. And I think the big question looming over everything is this the beginning of the Republican Party as a whole coming home to Donald Trump? Your interview with Governor Sununu in New Hampshire, Marco Rubio coming out today and saying that he is endorsing Donald Trump. Right. Kim Reynolds, the governor of Iowa, who has endorsed Ron DeSantis, saying today, well, if Trump is the nominee, I'll support him. I mean, it's awfully early for these politicians to be worried about their political livelihoods. That typically happens around Super Tuesday. It's happening in January.
Well, they think it's about survival. Add one other thing, and that is that after New Hampshire comes South Carolina. This is Nikki Haley's home state. If you look back at the recent polls, CNN had a poll October 31st. There was another one in November. Donald Trump is leading Nikki Haley in her home state, 29 to 30 points. So, yes, Nikki Haley is doing better. Yes, she may exceed expectations tonight. She may do very well in New Hampshire. But she, you know, what happens after that? Donald Trump still has his grip on this party.
Yeah, well, there is no runway laid out.
There's no sort of clear path for anyone. You can say, yeah, Nikki Haley will win New Hampshire and maybe that'll give her momentum going into South Carolina. But there really isn't a clear path for anyone other than Donald Trump at this point. And you talk about all these people endorsing Donald Trump early. It's for their own political survival. They're sort of like, let's get on the Trump train early because that'll be good for us. And, you know, I think that's just the thinking. This is, you know, make no mistake about it, this is Donald Trump's Republican Party.
That's what it is. It's not a combination of moderate Democrats and whatever else, whoever else is going to be voting in New Hampshire. This is his party, and the loyalty to him is immense, and it has grown since the indictments.
Right.
And I think that there's a lot of people believing that it's unstoppable.
But what was it? I think it was one of your sources, or your sources was saying that if you get out now, if you're Haley or DeSantis, that some people around them are saying keep a skeleton campaign ready.
Yeah.
Well,
Scaramucci was telling me that
Anthony
yesterday.
Scaramucci was telling you yesterday. You interviewed him from Davos. Yeah, I mean, Jonah, it is this unprecedented moment because, I mean, I guess we were saying this off camera earlier, but it seems like the whole country is accepting that Trump is probably going to be the nominee and really soon. That's what people expect. But they're kind of thinking there could be some big black swan event and the whole thing gets upended.
Yeah, so I agree with you except for the phrase, it seems like the whole country, right? I think the Biden people, their data people say most Democrats aren't paying attention and don't think that Trump's actually going to be the nominee, and that's one of the reasons why they haven't come home yet.
Yep.
In the heart of the GOP, the primary electorate, that's true. And that's also why the Haley campaign and the DeSantis campaign are betting on a change in mass psychology. Howard Dean was the runaway, dispositive frontrunner until he lost in the Iowa caucuses, and overnight his support evaporated across the country. This kind of thing happens where if you have a loss, it takes the wind out of your sails of inevitability, and that's the only way Nikki Haley can parlay this into a victory is if she comes as a surprising finish here, wins in New Hampshire, all of a sudden people are like, wait a second, Donald Trump is not this behemoth. He's behold the God who bleeds, right? And then you go into South Carolina with that argument behind you. It's still an uphill climb for her, but that's the only argument they got.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to remember that Donald Trump is not inevitable. He is not Baba Yaga. He will not, destroy all of his opposition. He is an actual politician with an actual background. And I think it's been interesting to watch how he is treating himself as if he was never president, or that his presidency existed in some other timeline, when only good things happen. It's interesting watching him talk about COVID, the thing he was president during. I was there. It didn't go the way he's talking about it. And so I think it really is about that idea of removing the inevitability. Make it more clear that this doesn't have to happen. I think a lot of Americans, actually, most Americans are watching football right now, and God bless them. But for the Americans who are paying attention to politics right now, it really does feel like it can't be it. This can't be it. This can't be what we're getting.
Happened. We were just talking about this as we were going to commercial break earlier, and we heard Ron DeSantis taking it to Donald Trump. And we were saying around the room, where was that Ron DeSantis?
Right.
Where, I mean, they waited, they blew it. They waited until the 11th hour when people have already, figured out their caucus site and their battle plan for going out and casting that secret ballot.
They treated him as if he was inevitable, and so they had to sound like him, be like him.
Also, they treated it as if Ron DeSantis was a quintessential post-Trump candidate, but we weren't post-Trump yet. Right, and that's the whole weird disconnect.
He wanted the mantle to be handed to him, Trump to fall away, and he didn't know what to do when Trump was competing with him.
It's as if people are waiting, or some people, I should say, are waiting for some external event to occur. That has really nothing to do with the way Donald Trump has campaigned or the way these candidates have campaigned, but some external event to somehow occur and change the trajectory of the what now seems to be an inevitable Trump nomination, although we're not 100% sure about that. But can you sit around and wait for something like that to happen, or should, as we were talking about, should these candidates have gone after him earlier instead of tonight and yesterday?
They completely banked on this sort of Jack Smith, Black Swan, whatever you want to call it, strategy. And that at some point, some meteor was going to come from outer space and knock Donald Trump off the political stage, and these other candidates who had not alienated his base by going after him would reap the benefits. And it just didn't happen, and it was a bad strategy.
When you put it that way, it sounds so absurd, and yet it's what happened.
It is what happened. It's like a Bugs Bunny cartoon.
All right. Next, we're going to talk to two Republican insiders who are up close with tonight's contest and talk about whether they expect Trump to overperform or underperform. And we're going to check in with our Brian Todd, who is live right now inside an actual caucus site.
Welcome back to our special coverage of the Iowa caucuses. Right now, voters are shuffling into caucus sites throughout Iowa to make their choice for the GOP presidential nominee. And they're turning out despite punishing below-zero temperatures. Governor Ron DeSantis using the harsh conditions as part of his last-minute pitch. Listen to this.
If you're willing to go out there in this temperature and dedicate a few hours of your life to doing the Iowa caucus, and you're supporting me, I'm going to be fighting for you for the next 8 years.
All right, let's go to CNN's Brian Todd. He's over at a caucus site in Council Bluffs, Iowa, where doors just opened. Brian, tell us what's going on.
Well, Wolf, people have already started to check in, and the caucus won't be called to order for more than another hour. So a lot of buzz brewing here in Council Bluffs at Precinct 8 here at Kern Middle School. This is where people check in. I'm going to take you through the process, and you're going to get a good sense here of just how grassroots this process really is. People check in here, you sign in here, match your ID to your address to make sure that everything is copacetic. If the address doesn't match, you've got to re-register. But then you get one of these. This is a sample ballot. Just how simple it looks here, that's great. You got your candidates of choice here. You circle one of them. That's when you start to vote. If they run out of these, Wolf, this is what people can put their votes on. That's how kind of simple and beautiful this process is. And what makes us really excited about covering this is that you get to see it all in real time. This is where the caucusing is going to take place. In this room here at Kern Middle School, the multi-purpose room. Some voters have already started to sit there. At 7 o'clock local time, 8 o'clock Eastern time, they call the caucus to order. They do the Pledge of Allegiance. Then they elect by voice vote the permanent chair and secretary of the caucus. Then the candidate surrogates, two of whom are already here, will make speeches. They get about 3 minutes to give their speeches, and then the vote starts to happen. What's really kind of cool about this, as I mentioned just how grassroots the process is, take a look at this. Once they fill out these ballots, this is what they put them in here. Popcorn buckets. They're going to circulate these, and these seats will be filled with people, hopefully in a couple of hours, where all of this will be going on. Once the votes are collected, put in the buckets, they'll be put on what's called Form E, which is the tabulating form. It's an orange sheet, and these caucus officials behind us will tabulate all that, put it on an app, and send it to Des Moines for the final count. So you're going to get to see it all in real time, Wolf, and that's really what makes us really jacked about covering the Iowa caucuses, because we're going to get to show all of this to you in real time.
Brian Todd, as he always does, an excellent explanation. Thanks very much, Brian, for that. For more insight on what we could see tonight, I want to bring in two longtime Iowa Republican insiders. Jeff Angelo is a popular conservative radio host and former state senator. And David Kochel is a GOP strategist who has worked on 6 Republican presidential campaigns. David Kochel, let me start with you. Trump is expected to do very well tonight based on all the recent polling. But you think he might actually overperform expectations? And if you do, why?
Well, that's what they're looking for, Wolf. They've been at 51 in the Real Clear Politics average. They kind of need to get over 50. They are more organized than they were in 2016 by a long ways. They've got about 1,700 precinct leaders. They've got these little white hats with gold trim saying Trump caucus captain, and they have sent a lot of information out to these caucus captains, and the organization is real and it's happening on the ground. So I think they want to outperform that. We'll see whether or not they're able to.
Jeff Angelo, do you think that Trump could actually overperform tonight?
No, I don't think so. I think that this is one of those caucuses where the weather really does make a difference. I think Trump has the most enthusiastic supporters, but I think that even some of the hardy Trump supporters tonight are going to look at 30 below zero wind chills and say, you know what, I think he's got it in the bag. I don't think that I need to go out there. So I think he comes in under 50 tonight.
Interesting. David, it seems to be a toss-up right now over whether Haley or DeSantis will actually place second. But you say Haley has the momentum going on right now. What are you seeing there on the ground?
Yeah, her events have grown over the last couple of months with the debates earlier in the fall. She's really grown support. over the last few months, and she's really pulled even with DeSantis, even a little ahead in this Iowa poll that we saw over the weekend. And he's built this great machine, of course, and he's got great endorsements with Governor Kim Reynolds, Bob Vanderplot's an evangelical leader here who matters a lot. So it's really going to be that muscle on the DeSantis side with all that spending, all those resources, all the grassroots against momentum, which really does, that has really created the difference for a couple of the candidates in the last few cycles. Momentum counts for a lot.
Jeff, you said last night that DeSantis is poised for second right now. What are you looking at that gives you that confidence?
I think that his turnout operation is very impressive. I think he's got his own people. I'm talking to people who have come in from Florida and Texas to these minus 11 temperatures. Some of them say, I'm going to put on a scarf and I'm going to go ahead and door knock for Ron DeSantis. So I'm impressed with that. I'm also impressed because of the governor's endorsement that gives him access to the governor's turnout operation. So I think it'll be robust tonight.
David, what does it say to you that Trump could win big time potentially in a state that he's spent far less time compared to his rivals?
Well, Trump isn't really like any other candidate. Obviously, he was president for 4 years. He's been on the ballot here, general election ballot twice. A lot of these voters still think he is president, Wolf. You know, people come to him. He doesn't have to go to 99 counties. He's a celebrity. He's the biggest presence in the party. So he really doesn't have to play by the same rules. Other candidates who are trying to get known, maybe they've seen Ron DeSantis on Fox a few times. They know that Nikki Haley was the ambassador. They got to go out and look for votes. It's just a little different for him. We've never really seen another candidate like Donald Trump. That's right.
Jeff, for the candidate that comes in third place tonight, will that candidate still have a path potentially to win the nomination?
I think DeSantis does not. I think if he comes in third place tonight, he should drop out. I think he's done. There is no path. I think if Haley comes in third tonight, she still thinks she's going to do well in New Hampshire and, of course, in South Carolina. I think that she stays in. But if DeSantis is third, he really is done.
Yeah, what do you think about that, David?
I think he's right. I think it's much lower stakes for Nikki Haley. She's run a multi-state campaign. She's well into second place in New Hampshire. New Hampshire doesn't just follow Iowa's lead. Oftentimes they'll say, we're not really sure what you did. We'd rather do something else. And, you know, her being the home state, former governor of South Carolina, it's really hard to see a path for DeSantis if he finishes third. And even if he finishes second, but just a little bit ahead of Nikki Haley, he's going to have to tell us where's the next state where he's going to compete. He finishes third in New Hampshire, third in South Carolina, which is what the polling strongly suggests now. It'll be a tough road for him.
All right, guys, thank you very, very much. And to our viewers, thanks very much for watching. We're just moments away from getting the first entrance poll results from Iowa as people gather across the state for caucus tonight. Our special coverage will continue right now.